What's up, everybody? Nick Dwyer back for the 10th inning, here with another episode of This Day in Sports History. In yesterday's episode, we had the first ever edition of the Little League World Series in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. We do have a Little League World Series to talk about today, as well as some more world records and some Olympic Games to get into. So if you all enjoy this video, leave a like on it. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get to it. This Day in Sports History. We'll start off today in 1883 at the U.S. National Championships on the men's side. Two-time defending champion Richard Sears would win his third of 7 straight U.S. titles and 7 overall Grand Slam singles titles after defeating James Dwight 6-2, 6-0, 9-7. Move over to Major League Baseball in 1906, and Cincinnati Reds' Jake Weimer would no-hit the Dodgers 1-0 in a 7-inning victory. This game was called due to darkness, so it's not official. Still, unofficial no-hitter. 1 year later, in 1907, at the Australasian Championship in tennis, Horace Rice would defeat Harry Parker 6-3, 6-4, 6-4 to win his only Grand Slam singles title. Now we move over to boxing in 1908, and Tommy Burns would knock out Bill Squires in 13 rounds to retain the heavyweight title. Back to the U.S. National Championships, this time on the women's side in 1925, Helen Wills Moody would defeat Kitty McCain 3-6, 6-0, 6-2 for her third straight U.S. singles title and her third of 19 Grand Slam singles titles. And speaking of Moody, 4 years later, Helen Wills Moody in 1929 would once again win the U.S. National Championship, defeating Phoebe Holcroft Watson 6-4, 6-2 to win her third straight 6th overall U.S. singles title and her 11th of 19 Grand Slam singles title. Now we move over to football in 1957, and Jimmy Greaves, at only 17 years old, would play his first game in the Premier League for Chelsea. Move up 1 year to 1958, and we have a world record in the men's marathon when Sergei Popov would run it in 2 hours, 15 minutes, 17 seconds, a record that would stand for 2 years. 5 years later, in 1963, we have another record to talk about, this time in the pole vault, and John Penno would become the first person to pole vault 17 feet at 5.2 meters, or 17 feet half inch, and this record would stand for just under 1 year. Move up to 1972, in the NHL Hall of Fame, Gordie Howe and Jean Bellevue would be the big names inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, but they would go there with Bernie Geoffrion, Hap Holmes, Hooley Smith, and Weston Adams. We move back to Major League Baseball in 1975, and San Francisco Giants pitcher Ed Halicki would no-hit the New York Mets in a 6-0 victory. Down the day, 9 innings pitched, 2 walks allowed, 10 strikeouts in the victory. We stay in 75, and at the PGA Tournament Players Championship, Al Gieberger at 10 under would lead wire to wire, finish 3 strokes ahead of runner-up Dave Stockton. Back to Major League Baseball in 1989, and Pete Rose would be suspended for baseball for the rest of his life, or otherwise known as banned for life, for gambling by Bart Giamatti, with the stipulation that he could reapply after 1 year. As of today, he's still banned for life. Now we go to the Little League World Series in 1991, and Taiwan would capture its 15th Little League World Series in an 11-0 victory over the team from California. 3 years later, in 1994, we have 2 world records to talk about from the same person in swimming. Kieran Perkins would break both the 800 and the 1500 meter freestyle world record. In the 800, he would swim it in 7 minutes, 46 seconds. He would hold this until 2001, and in the 1500 meter, 14 minutes, 41.66 seconds, and he would hold it till 2001. 3 years later, in 2007, at the 97th edition of the U.S. Golf Amateur Championship, Matt Kuchar would win 2-1 over Joel Tribble. 7 years later, we move to the Athens Olympics, and we start off in the 3,000 meter steeplechase, and there would be a Kenyan sweep with Ezekiel Kemboi winning gold at 8 minutes 5.81 seconds ahead of Bremen Kipruto and Paul Kipsili Koech. Then in the men's 1500 meter, Hicham El Derouge of Morocco would win his first leg of the 1500 5,000 meter double with a time of 3 minutes 34.19 seconds. Over to the decathlon now, and Roman Sibrely of the Czech Republic would set an Olympic record of 8,893 points to win the gold medal. Over to the pole vault in 2004, and Yelena Isinbayeva of Russia would vault 4.91 meters to break her own vault world record and win the gold medal, ahead of teammate Svetlana Feofanova. Isinbayeva would go on to break this less than 2 weeks later, and she would break this many more times until 2009, when she would set the current record that still stands. Finally, in those games, in the beach volleyball gold medal, Americans Kerri Walsh and Misty May would team up to win the women's beach volleyball over Brazil 21-17, 21-11 to claim their first of 3 straight Olympic golds. 2 years later in 2006, after signing a one-day contract with the San Francisco 49ers, probably the greatest wide receiver of all time, Jerry Rice, would officially retire. Move up to 2007 and the 11th edition of the Athletics World Championship would open in Osaka, Japan. 1 year later, we get into the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing, and it became the most watched event on TV ever, with nearly 5 billion people, or 70% of the world's population, watching. And what were they watching, you might ask? Well, my guess is a good amount of people, at least from the USA, were watching the American men's basketball team, led by the likes of LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and Chris Paul, win the gold medal in a relatively narrow game for the US team, 118-107 over Spain. But we did also have some other events they could have been watching. For instance, in the marathon, Samuel Wanderl would become the first Kenyan to win the Olympic marathon in an Olympic record 2 hours, 6 minutes, 32 seconds. Then in the men's water polo gold medal match, Daniel Varga and Peter Biros would both score 3 goals, as Hungary would end up winning the gold medal and win their 3rd consecutive Olympic gold to make it 9 Olympic water polo gold medals. 6 years later, in 2014 at the Canadian Open on the women's side, So Yeon Yu at 23 under would win 2 strokes ahead of runner-up Na Yeon Choi. And we end today's video off in 2018. This is kind of another unwritten rule, I'll say. The French Open would ban Serena Williams' black Nike catsuit from future tournaments, citing respect for the game and the place. Now this is a little ludicrous in my opinion, but again, we don't make the rules here. The people in charge of the tournaments do. It's a little silly, but what can you say? So there you have it. That's what happened on this day in sports history. If I left anything out, I do apologize. If I mispronounced any names, I also apologize. But I'll see everybody tomorrow for Nick Dwyer and the 10th inning. See ya.